So my name is Vincent Vertongen. I work at the Belgian office, and I've been at Performation for about 1.5 years right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elena. I've been in Platformation for 4 months now for the Greek entity, and I'm very excited for this presentation.
I hope everyone else is also excited.
Hope so.
What do we have on the menu today? First, we're going to give you a little bit of context, so you cannot talk about prompt engineering without talking about large language models. Also, a very quick introduction on prompt engineering itself, like what is it not? And in the end, the main course, the most important part is like, what are some best practices? How do we actually improve our prompts and also optimize like the output we're going to get from different LLMs. Why would you actually use LLMs? Well, actually, they are very good at automating certain tasks. They can help you with tons of things like creating emails, making documentation, just creating a training also. It's very widely applicable. So it's not just like a ServiceNow consultant who only knows anything about ServiceNow. It knows a lot. It's good to spark inspiration. It's very good to be considered as a source of inspiration. It is going to generate quite a lot of things that you didn't think about. And you can actually pick up on these things to make things that, well, I mean, would be more than if you just start working on it. Also, natural language, while there is different ways to interact with it, you're not, if you want it to run completely optimally, you're not going to speak to an LLM like you're talking to another human, even though it's also going to work, but you can still use everyday words. And multilingual support, it's not only in English. Most training data is in English, so I think English is going to give you the best results, but you can talk to it in Hindi, you can talk to it in Greek, you can even use it to translate. Always be a little careful when you're doing that, but it's quite flexible and it can save you a lot of time. But I mean, now I'm just talking about, whoa, sunshine, rainbows, it's amazing. But I have a colleague who's going to tell you that it's maybe not always that great.
So indeed, we may think that LLMs are always right, but that's not the case. Here is a great example of that, where a user asked how many M's are in the word weather, and the model confidently said that there is one M. And here, it's actually a great example that you have to keep in mind. Later, we're going to explain the tactic that the user used here to make the LLM work. But that's just one way of investigating things that can go wrong. Another great example is the use of this chatbot, where a user actually tricked the model, this chatbot, to give him a car for $1, and the answer from the chatbot was no taxes baxes. So, I mean, if you are a malicious user, you can actually trick an LLM into saying things that are not appropriate. Again, a last example of things going wrong is this chat, where the malicious user actually tricked the LLM into saying bad things for the company that this chatbot was used for.
Just be very aware that the way you're going to formulate your prompts is going to have a very big effect on the way the answer is going to be. So that actually brings us to prompt engineering. Amazing, right? In short, it's just a fancy way of saying being able to communicate clearly in writing. It's like a relationship we have with AI, and the key to every relationship is communication. So it's really being able to say, this is what I want the AI to understand and to do, being able to bring the message. And if you say it's fancy, it's prompt engineering. All right, so why prompt engineering matters? It's just going to give you an overall better user experience. Why? Because, for example, you're going to have more enhanced accuracy. You're going to ask very specific questions, and it's also going to be aware of the context. Sometimes it just doesn't have enough context to really give you a good answer. Even for humans, that's the case. I mean, the Romans used to make better cement than we did just because we knew the recipe needed water, but we never realized that it was salted water from the Mare Nostrum. So there's sometimes a lot of information that we're missing, and which also results in us not giving good output. Same for LLM. Also, consistent output structure, giving examples, giving an idea of how it has to be structured. You can really make sure that it's going to have the structure that you want it to have. And tackling complexity, there are certain things that you can do, like very easy tasks. You can just ask them and still be quite critical with it. But you're never going to ask an LLM like integrate SharePoint with ServiceNow. So let's travel 2,000 kilometers to Greece.
Here I am the person to do that. So let's start with the basic best practices in prompt engineering. And we're going to start with the most straightforward and useful strategy, in my opinion, which is the writing of clear instructions. And this strategy includes some tactics, some of which you might already use, but others you might have forgotten about or never even thought of, and can actually be very useful and transform your prompts. So first and foremost, include more details in your query to get more relevant answers. These models cannot read your mind. Give as much detail and context as possible to get the best out of them. Another one that you may forget is to ask the model to adopt a persona. And what does that include? It's simply just saying, act as a business consultant, or imagine you're a marketing specialist. That kind of question can give a different kind of context to your model, which can lead to much more relevant output that you can actually use in your daily work. Also, don't forget to use the limiters in your prompts. This way, you can clearly indicate distinct parts of the input, and that can lead to a much more structured and result and better result. This may not make a difference in the output quality if you have, for example, simpler tasks, but with a more complex task, it can be important in order to disambiguate the task details. And something you should not forget about is to provide examples whenever you have one. If you give an example of a response you want when prompting, it could get you very close to actually getting a similar output in your next set of prompts as well. And last, but definitely not least, is to specify the desired length of the output. If you want to get a summary of a paper, let's say, specify how many words the summary needs to be. Providing context of this kind can lead to a result you'll actually be able to use with little or no adaptations at all. So an example of this strategy is the change in this prompt. A simple question from a user could be, how do I add numbers in Excel? And that's something that we have in mind when we are working, and the question that we most likely will ask the model. But using the previous tactics that I mentioned, we can actually improve this question in a much better way. And you can actually answer in the comments or speak up if you see any of the tactics that we already mentioned in the improved prompt, or even the first sentence. The first sentence, you can actually see that we are including more details in our query. By saying numbers, the model doesn't read our mind. What kind of numbers do we want? We want a row of dollar amount, let's say. And then following in the query is the specification of the desired length of the output. It's simply just saying that we want a whole set of rows. It can actually give you a better result. The last is what you're mentioning, Sergio, is the use of the delimiters. Like by simply specifying that we want the column name total and separating that from the prompt can give a different kind of context to the model and lead to less confusion for that. And we actually imported these questions into Copilot, and we want to give you the difference between the two prompts. So let's say we first have the simple query. The results that we are getting are actually correct, but they tend to be quite vague. So you can get into them and get the result that you'd like, but you have to do some more effort on your side to get it to your specific needs. We are still loading, but if we go to the improved prompt, the tactics we used gave us a relevant answer and that we could potentially use to our work, and an answer that specifies in steps what we need to do in Excel, what numbers we need to add, and the specific columns that we are working on. So that's something that you can literally quite take it and use it in your work. next strategy that we have, and it's the splitting complex tasks into subtasks. This, again, a very important one, and it's similar like to software engineering. If you have a complex system, it's better to decompose it into a set of modular components. And the same is for tasks. Higher complexity tasks tend to get higher errors. So just simply keeping them into subtasks can help you with your prompts. First, let's start with the use of intent classification. By identifying the most relevant instructions for a user query. If we pinpoint the most important tasks, you're helping the language model help you. So it is much more structured. In addition, in long conversations, summarize or filter previous dialogue. Remind the model of a previous dialogue and help you get better prompts as you are not building them from the start, but rather improving them step by step. So chatbots don't have infinite memory, let's say. So after a new prompt is given, summarize the previous answer so that they know what goes on every single time. And also for long documents, piecewise and construct a full summary recursively. Like every now and then, summarize what it said. A good example of that could be if you want the summary of a book, let's say. If you ask the model and you give him the book, and you ask for a summary, you're going to most likely get irrelevant data in there, or even hallucinations, or parts that don't fit in. Whereas if you ask the model to summarize each chapter accordingly, twist some things in the middle, adapt them your way, and then summarize the summaries, you're going to get a result that you can use with little or no adaptation at all. So let's see a practical example of that tactic with a more like coding example, but again, very simple. So this is like explaining the process of a simple calculator Python code. So if we use that simple prompt, we see that we are, of course, getting the code for basic operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. And then on the side, we have some of the results that the model gave, some help to the user. But what we can see is the difference between the prompt here and the approved one lies exactly here. In the simple one, we were getting advice like the user should add only 2 numbers, or if the input is not valid, the prompts, when you need to enter a valid choice. But with the improved prompt, we ask the model to divide the arithmetic operations. We explain each one, and we specify what the end user should know before entering the numbers to the system. And actually, if we run this prompt, we are going to see that it gave us a clear indication of the operations that they are working. All right, it actually gave more instructions, like you can only use numbers, not letters or special characters, or the limitation for the division that the second number should not be 0. Stuff that are quite important that were missed in the simple query. And also that the numbers can be positive, negative, or 0. Again, stuff that wasn't included at the first prompt. The last of the 3 most important strategies in prompt engineering, which is the giving the model time to think. In order to get familiar with this one, we're going to start off with an example first. This is from the OpenAI page. And it is actually a very good example to explain the thought process, let's say, of a model. So we have a teacher right here that is asking the model if the student's solution is correct. And line by line, the student's solution is itself correct. So that's what the model answered. But that's not actually the case. If we look into it, we're going to see that the student actually used $100 per square foot for its addition instead of the correct $10 amount. And the model didn't pick that up. But with an improved prompt from the teacher, where it asks the model to first work out its own solution to the problem and then check the solution of the student, we see that the model actually found the mistake and pointed it out. So give the model time to think, and it will improve the result and maybe pick up some mistakes. So what are the tactics that are being used here? First, as already mentioned, instruct the model to work out its own solution before rushing to a conclusion. If I ask you to multiply, let's say, 17 by 28, you might know it instantly, but you still need to work it out over time. You may make a mistake at the first minute. Similarly, models make more reasoning errors when they are trying to answer things right away. So if you're giving them time to work out the answer and you're maybe asking for a chain of thought before the answer, it can help the model reason its way towards correct answers more reliably. And then another, maybe even optional step, let's say, is that can be useful sometimes, is to use inner monologue or a sequence of queries to hide the model's reasoning process. What we mean by that is, let's say that you just want the actual answer. You do not want all the steps that are leading onto it. You can ask the model for that. You can just ask that you can hide your reasoning process. You can just show me the relevant answer. But that, in my opinion, that's something to use within reason, though, because sometimes the actual thought process of the model can give you valuable information to make adaptations down the line. You can pinpoint yourself. As you said, it is a co-pilot, it's not pilot. You need to make adaptations yourself. So maybe the steps that the model gives you in between can help you understand the process fully and make adaptations as you're moving along. And then a final check that can also be a very helpful tactic. Remember the example that we used with the word whether? The user actually asked the model, "Are you sure?" And then the model found out the mistake and found out that there isn't any M's in the word whether. By asking the model if it missed anything on previous passes, you're getting better results, and because it's a product of a series of queries rather just like a simple prompt. So we actually have an example of this strategy as well, where we're first using a prompt without any tactics, and we are asking the model to write a paragraph about the importance of time management. And what we're seeing is, okay, the model is producing a paragraph about the importance of time management, but the outcome is just listing some of the benefits, nothing very specific or detailed, and the result is quite vague. If we prove the prompt and we ask the model to maybe reflect on the significance of time management in various aspects of life, pinpoint that we want some key points to consider, and afterwards instruct that we want an outcome that combines, let's say, all those aspects, we are getting a result. We're actually getting a result that's like much more detailed than the previous prompt. We are getting much more detailed points. They are structured by the different aspects of proper time management that it has impact on. And it is an answer that you can actually use to answer your question with, let's say, even no adaptations at all. So just giving the model some more info and time to think can improve the whole result. And after all the basic, let's say, best practices, we have created an example of that combines tactics from various strategies, a mega example, if you will. And let's say we want to generate a business strategy proposal for a company entering a new market. Now, we want to use all the tactics that we've learned before. So below that, we have the improved example. Actually, the first sentence is what we talked about that we often tend to forget. we are asking the model to adopt a persona, just like an impersonation in ServiceNow, let's say. We are saying that we are a seasoned business consultant specializing in market expansion strategies for tech startups, and we want the model to act that way as well. That can give you a more focused answer, an answer that you can use in your work. And then after asking the model to adopt this persona, we're including more details. We're saying what company are we working for, what market we are targeted at. So we are giving a context to the model, let's say, to provide better results. And then on the second paragraph, we are actually splitting complex tasks into simpler subtasks. We're saying that we want the strategy proposal to be structured with an introduction. We're following by the marketing plan, the operation plan, the risk assessment, the conclusion. We are giving a much more structured input to get a much more structured output. We cannot expect that from a model if we are not providing some kind of context. And then in like the last line, we are specifying the desired length of the output. We want this proposal to be 500 words. We even go beyond that and say that we have the limitation to have 100 words for the introduction and the conclusion. That can give a context to the model, so it doesn't bring irrelevant data to the table just to bring a very long proposal. You just contain yourself in these words, and so you can actually use it. And we actually run this example again in Copilot, just forcing you to use Copilot at this point, is where the simple prompt, it gave us, of course, what we are asking for, a business strategy proposal for entering a new market. But since we did not give any context at all, we see that we are getting a quite vague result. It's quite general. It is, in fact, in general correct, but it tends to get a bit irrelevant at some point and not really structured. You're not going to use that, just copy paste that and do little adaptations and call it a day. But if we are using the improved prompt, this long paragraph of detail, we're going to see that after the 4 tactic, we are having a business proposal for our company, XYZ Tech. And it's a strategy that's structured to the aspects that we pinpointed and has the expected output, so gives less room to hallucinations, irrelevant data. And you can actually use this business strategy plan with just little adaptation to our specific needs and make it sound a little bit less AI and more like you wrote it yourself, which you should sometimes. So these are all the most important strategies, let's say, the 3 basic ones and tactics that are following along. But we can always achieve for better results. So Vincent will let you in a few more tips and tricks on how to make the prompts better.
Yes, thanks, Eleni. So indeed, these are already 3 strategies that are being provided by OpenAI. In total, they have 6 of them. I just don't think, we didn't think that all of them would be as relevant. Some are a bit more niche, but let's still go into them, but maybe not in the same amount of detail. The first one then would actually be checking prompt performance after a small test changes. So it's called test changes systematic. It's really just be agile. Just start with your prompts, do something, look at what the output would be, and then make a little tweak in your prompt just to see how is the output actually going to change. It's quite a new field, let's say. So you can actually just start learning, if I make these little changes, what would actually happen? This way you can just start experimenting with it and continuously improve your own prompts. Also use a specific resource website or text, highly linked with the second point that Eleni said of using subtasks. Sometimes you just want a summary of one specific page or one specific book or one specific chapter. You don't want it to start searching the whole of the internet, the entirety of the internet. You want it to actually really limit itself to certain points. Also make use of specialized tools. Again, be careful which kinds of tools. But where is this going to be very important? It is within ServiceNow, we are also going to have large language models. And there's going to be the general ones for which we can like integrate with Azure, integrate with ChatGPT, etc., etc. But sometimes we have these tools that are really super specialized in one certain field. That's where we are, for example, going to have like the GenAI for ITSM. Everything that's going to support ITSM, these LLMs are like hyper trained on all the tasks that have to be done, that you have to do right there. The results are going to be way more accurate than if you're using a general AI. So general AI is something else, but let's say an AI that's not specialized.